We all tell stories every day in our workplaces. And those stories often focus on diversity and the diverse environments that we strive to create. And when we hire, we cast roles and create images of what we want companies to be. And attracting diverse talent is just the beginning of that story. Our first panel of the day aims to discuss real inclusivity and not only how to attract a diverse talent, but also what happens next and the insights and practices that bring true progress. So please help me in welcoming our moderator, Karolina Miranda of the Los Angeles Times, and our panelists for the first discussion of the day entitled Getting Bias Out of Our Systems. Welcome Karolina Miranda and the panelists.
Thank you. Hello. So I think it was Liji. Oh, perfect. I know. Well, thank you so much to everyone for being here today, to the panelists. I'm Karolina Miranda of the LA Times. I write about art and culture for the newspaper. I'm also co-chair of the first ever employee union at the LA Times, and issues of diversity were just such a huge part of our campaign and our contract process, and really thinking about the concrete steps we could take to make true diversity happen and maintain it. So I'm very excited to be here today talking about these issues with these panelists, because I think, at a place like the LA Times, which is about telling stories, one of the questions we were constantly asking is, well, who gets to tell those stories? How are they telling those stories? Who edits those stories and who directs those stories? And so that is an issue that has been really important to me, and I'm very excited to be here to discuss it with the panel. I wanted just to keep things quick because I know we have a limited amount of time. I'm going to ask each member to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Ilit. I'm the CEO of a company called Joonko. We help companies source diverse candidates, women, people of colors, and veterans automatically. We are originally from Israel, headquarters in Birmingham, Alabama, speaking about diversity. That's it.
Good morning, everybody. I am Liji Thomas. I'm the head of diversity inclusion for Southern California Edison. Previously, I built diversity inclusion from the ground up for Southwest Airlines. And hugely passionate about this work. We've made some bold commitments at SoCal Edison, and I think you want us to keep our intro short, so looking forward to this conversation with fellow panelists.
Hi everyone, I'm Kristina Hatcher. I head up inclusion and diversity within our HR team at Creative Artists Agency. It's an entertainment, media, and sports entertainment company. Prior to that, my entire background has been recruiting and talent acquisition. So through the relationships that I built on the recruiting and talent acquisition side, when I came into the company, got some unique insights and information that helped inform and shape my decision to move into the inclusion and diversity space and asked to create the first official role that we had at the company, really focusing on the people function. So the environment, when we think about employee engagement and retention, as well as what are those opportunities that we can provide to our employees to make sure that we are really setting each and every individual up for success. I'm happy to be here.
Great. I'm Alex Seiler. I'm the head of HR for the Americas for a company called Control Risks. For those of you that don't know Control Risks, we're a global risk consultancy, specialist risk consultancy that focuses on helping our clients create secure, resilient, and compliant organizations in what is a very volatile world right now as well. So that's really our focus. Our company is headquartered out of London in the UK, so we're very global in nature. And diversity and inclusion is part, like all my other panelists, part of our core values. But we're also doing some very interesting work to really shape our decision making and make sure that we are creating an ecosystem which is really diverse and inclusive in nature. So we're really trying to walk the talk, not just talk the talk, so to speak. So.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marion Brooks. I'm the Vice President and U.S. Country Head of Diversity and Inclusion for Novartis Pharmaceuticals. Been with the company for 20 years. I started in elementary school, just joking. But I spent the majority of my career on the commercial side of the business, so head of sales, head of marketing, and I'm also an author, and last year I launched a book, and the organization is really moving towards trying to infuse D&I into everything that we do versus the business being here, D&I being there. So they tapped me with my commercial experience and my passion around diversity and inclusion to lead the country efforts around D&I.
Awesome. So I think one of the things I was reading to prepare for this panel, I was reading a Harvard Business Review article from 2012 that asked the question of why so many diversity efforts in companies fail, and it talked about moving beyond establishing the diversity committee, making sure that diversity efforts are linked into every element of the company, that goals are set, that timelines are set. Where do you want to be in 5 years, and what are the paths you can take to get there? So I wanted to start, so we're going to discuss some of the very concrete things that these folks here are doing to make this happen. And I wanted to start with Illy, because your company, this is what they do. So I'd love a brief primer on how it is you do what you do.
Sure. So like I said, we help companies source diverse candidates. The way that we do it is that we build out a community of companies that every company's give and take from the community. So basically, if I'm a candidate that applied to your company, went through a few steps in the process and considered a qualified candidate but didn't get the job, this can be a friction of a reason that I didn't get the job, and Joonko identified me, as either a woman, person of color, or a veteran, then I'm offered a job in another company within the pool. So basically, companies exchange qualified diverse candidates with each other constantly. It's all done automatically. You don't need to do anything. We identify their gender, race, and if they're veterans, yes or no, automatically. We match them with the best jobs for them. And for big companies, we also do it internally. So a mobility opportunity, but also if a candidate applied to a job in New York, and now he's actually a good fit for a Boston, and we're going to make sure that you don't lose this candidate, that you walk through the whole pipeline and move them to another job in the company. Have about 45,000 candidates active every month in the pool. And it's just a shared economy model brought into talent acquisition.
And you literally plug into the databases that companies maintain.
So we plug
to
whatever ATS companies are using, doesn't matter what it is. And doing automatically everything on the background for them, so they don't have to do any effort from any kind. The candidate will stream into your ATS, and that's it.
I think there are probably people who are going to want her business card after this. Liji, I wanted to ask you about some of the efforts that you've taken at SoCal Edison.
Yeah. Happy to talk about it. So I'll start off by saying, so much of the conversation today is about unconscious bias training. What 50 plus years of D&I work has taught us is that if your efforts are limited to training, you're really missing the boat on this stuff. So mitigating bias in our HR systems, understanding the barriers that underrepresented talent, women, people of color face, is absolutely critical to long-term D&I sustainability. We've made some bold commitments in this area. For example, we've signed on to the Paradigm for Parity, which is a public commitment to achieve 50-50 men and women in senior roles by 2030. And that's looking at the barriers, it's understanding barriers across the HR life cycle. We're also talking about intersectionality and taking a data-driven approach. So today, if you're just looking at race and gender, it can really mask barriers that folks are really experiencing. So getting really smart about diversity is something that we're absolutely looking at.
What are some of the other aspects of diversity that you look at?
So I'll talk briefly about a framework that we just presented to our board of directors last year. It's called PAE, P-A-A-E. The PAE is for pay, compensation, looking at pay equity. This is a hot topic in corporate America, but as much as we talk about it, there are very few institutions that can say that they offer equal pay for equal work. We actually did a study last year and we started with gender. We looked at men and women, and I'm proud to say that at SoCal Edison, men and women make equal pay for equal work. That being said, we have opportunity to advance women to more of the higher paying roles at Edison. So that's a current focus for us. The other A of that framework is around access. Does everyone have equal access to your hypo programs? Are you mitigating bias in that selection process? The other A is for advancement. Once you've looked at pay equity and access issues, looking at career path for all employees, and the E is for environment, culture shift, which is the real benchmark of D&I success. And I often say that underrepresented talent, people of color, women, are leading indicators of broken talent management systems, and if you fix it for them, you will fix it for everyone, including straight white men who lack social capital.
Thank you. On to you, on to the entertainment industry, which I know diversity is a hot topic there.
Yes, very much so. And I do want to call out that we all, when we spoke about this panel, we spoke about just each company being in a different part of their journey. And I think that that's so important to recognize, is that, you know, you all here are obviously passionate about the topic, and as are we. And so we're all just at different parts of our journey, and sometimes we'll have conversations around what we're doing and actually realize that we're much further along than we thought. So it's just all about perspective. But at CAA, so as I mentioned, we just officially created the role in March of last year in our HR team. We've definitely had a lot of concerted efforts on the client side of our business, but when it comes down to the people side of our business, how are we bringing in more diverse perspectives to make sure that we have equal representation in terms of our clients, and that we're able to draw in a lot more diversity when it comes to our clients. We really have to look at the people side of our business, and that even goes down to Liji's point, to the systems. Like, what are we doing to actually rid bias from our systems? And so one of the platforms that we recently signed on to is a platform called Textio. And it's an augmented writing platform, and basically what it does is it works internally as well as externally. So you can connect it to your applicant tracking system, and so as you are crafting job descriptions, also as you're crafting emails, anything of that nature, basically what it does is it seeks to rid any language that basically could eliminate or keep certain groups of individuals from applying, for instance. So if there are words that traditionally don't resonate with women or underrepresented communities, it actually will give you suggestions. So it doesn't rewrite the job description for you, but it literally highlights the words and will give you suggestions, and you can just click on the word and change the job description. So it's a very efficient platform, and our recruiters are really loving it. And then we're having conversations about whether or not we actually roll that out to our entire company, because you can actually use it within emails as well. So it'll connect to like Outlook and things like that. So it's a very handy system that can really kind of help you be more thoughtful about unintentionally excluding people when you're trying to bring these diverse individuals into your company. Another thing that we do, and I am a firm believer as well, is that training is not the end-all be-all, but I think something that I'm so incredibly passionate about is education when it comes to an employee population that literally is focused on getting their clients jobs. And so we focus so much externally. How do we educate our employees internally to make sure that there's buy-in and that these efforts are sustainable, so that, let's say, for instance, if I wasn't there, if we didn't have a head of D&I, our business can basically support these efforts because they have the knowledge to do so. And so we have actually partnered with an organization called Garden, Swartz and Rowe. They're two women who are fantastic, have actually been doing this work since they helped integrate LA Unified back in, I think it was like 77. So they're incredibly passionate about it. On the topic of their other areas of diversity outside of race and gender and ethnicity, they developed a model called the 4 layers of diversity. And so they seek to educate companies and different employees on the other areas outside of just race, gender, and ethnicity, and even educating us on what these terms are. I know a lot of people traditionally confuse race and ethnicity, which there have been so many different light bulb moments in these sessions, but what we've done is basically taken what is normally like a three-day to a week session, and we've condensed that down into 2 hours, and I've been able to run these sessions across our LA, New York, and Nashville offices with our agents and executives. And if anyone knows about agents and executives in the entertainment industry, it's tough to even get them to sit down for 5 minutes. So to get them in a room for 2 hours and have them incredibly engaged is a pretty amazing feat. And so these sessions really seek to help our agents and executives understand how to leverage diversity of thought in a better way as they're creating client teams. So it really informs like who you're bringing into the room as you're signing different clients, who you're even taking to a lunch to get introduced to a certain client, and how do we also help those who may not have the same relationships that we do to continue to progress in the company. What it also does is really empowers them to understand that it's not just recruiting that owns who comes into the building. At the end of the day, our agents and executives are the hiring managers, and so we want to make sure that they are being as thoughtful as possible as they're making their hiring decisions. We know we all have bias, but how do we actually attack that and understand, like, how do we question our assumptions when we're going through interviews and someone may not, look like us and things of that nature. So the sessions have been pretty amazing, and now we're starting to think about, to Liji's point, like, what is that follow-up after that, and how do we help them continue building on that knowledge?
Terrific. Thank you, Kristina. Alex, you work in a very different universe with a very different culture. Tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives your company.
Yeah, I think feeding off Liji's point about unconscious bias training, you can't really just focus solely on that and assume you'll be successful. I totally agree with. I think that behavioral inclusion with structural inclusion will change the status quo, but you can't just rely on one versus the other. And so I think we are taking our leaders on a journey of self-discovery around really what their biases are, really being able to see them, but then also creating talent processes that are equitable and fair and transparent that support that. So I think both of them in tandem are really helping shape our workforce as well. One of the things that we do that I really like, and I actually firsthand went through this, was when I joined the organization in July. I'm what's called a partner in our organization. It's not like a partner in a law firm, it's a corporate partnership that was set up about 3 or 4 years ago. So we have about 100 partners across our organization, and they represent the leadership across the company. And so when you join the organization, whether as an internal promotion, internally, promoted into a partner role, or externally as a lateral partner, you go through what's called a PAC process, which is a partner appointment committee. And so I will say it was a very thoughtful process, which means it slows down the decision making as well. But the beauty of it is it was global in its approach. So they're panel interviews, and on it, there was gender diversity, there was departmental diversity, there was diversity of different regions. I mean, and also the nice thing is, my boss, who was obviously the sponsoring CEO, he may sit in the final PAC interview, but he's not weighing in to, again, avoid that sense of bias as well, really letting people kind of call out and challenge any bias, right? And if somebody on the PAC is not happy with a particular candidate, they can very well block or say, I'm not comfortable, and you don't move forward with the process. So I think it really does take out that sort of sense of hierarchy and allows people to actually have a voice in the process, which I found really useful as well. And it sort of reasserts the globality of our company. Our clients are very international and diverse by nature. So since I've come into the organization, we felt that sense of openness. And as you can imagine, we operate in a lot of countries where English is not your first language. So when we go through this process, we don't use the word cultural fit. We focus on language around behaviors and values to really kind of look at something that works across the globe, right? Versus language, which is different in different cultures as well. So I think that's been very useful. Similar to what Kristina said, we have the core, like, I think we're all on a different journey. You know, I think AI technology might work for one company right now, but where we are on our journey and the nature, to your point, Karolina, of the type of people that we hire a lot of ex-FBI, CIA, you know, you have to be thoughtful of, first of all, we're picking from a market, first of all, which is largely male-dominated and is very much niche in nature. So we really try to go out of our way to make sure that we are looking at atypical, traditional types of channels to bring in people as well, not just people we know or we've worked with in the past. So the PAC in particular, I think at a leadership level, has really kept us honest.
Great.
Yeah.
Marion, I know your company has made some very concrete steps towards working on issues of parity, so I'd love to hear about some of those and how they work within the context of this very large firm.
Yes, so for me, I think the whole diversity and inclusion conversation has to be shifted to the WIFM. What's in it for me, for individuals to really buy into it. And the research shows that there are 3 clear benefits that organizations receive from having more diverse teams. Number 1, higher revenues. Number 2, they're more innovative. And number 3, more responsive to customer needs. So I don't care if it's a little league team or a major corporation, no organization does not want those 3 things. So I root everything on that, and I start all of my conversations saying, if we believe the research, and these are the 3 benefits, now how do we execute, right? How do we ensure that we have more diverse teams? So there's some research from the Harvard Business Review that says if you only have 1 woman or 1 person of color in a candidate pool, they have statistically 0% chance of receiving an offer for the role. Just by adding 1 additional qualified woman or person of color to that candidate pool, it goes up to over 50% that one of them would receive an offer. And it's based on confirmation bias. So if you have 4 men and 1 woman going for a role, just in human nature, naturally the confirmation is, well, obviously it's a man is going to be the best candidate because there are 4 of them. So within organizations, by simply diversifying the candidate pools, and not just people that submit resumes, but people that actually get interviews, and holding a standard to that, you significantly increase the opportunity to diversify your work teams. Now, at Novartis, one of the things that we've implemented that's going to be starting January 1st are new hiring guidelines. So now you have to have at least 1 woman and at least 1 person of color in the final candidate pool, or you cannot move forward with the role. Now, I got some pushback when I went to our country presidents. Well, thank you. So I was presenting to all of the country presidents for the different Novartis organizations and, you know, getting their approval for the new guidelines. And someone said, well, Marion, that's going to take more time, right? If we're going to do that, that's going to slow down the process. And I said, okay, I agree with you. So the question is, going back to those 3 things, if you want higher revenues, you want to be more innovative and more responsive to customer needs, the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to do it fast? Or do we want to do it right? And they approved it. So I do come from sales. But those types of efforts and those types of concrete things really make a difference. But the main thing is being able to ground on what's in it for me, what's in it for the individual, what's in it for the organization. D&I cannot be a nice to have or the right thing to do anymore. We really have to tie it to the benefits that it offers to the organization. And we're doing a number of things like the pay transparency, pay equity. Right now we have 43% women in leadership. The challenge that we've identified is women of color. So we've made great strides over the last 10 years for gender in leadership overall, but women of color have told me we're not receiving the same benefits. So we have concerted efforts around that, and I have a program that we're rolling out in January as well to really increase the number of women of color in leadership and people of color overall.
I love that you brought up the issue of the interview, of just expanding not just the applicant pool, but the interview pool, and that was something that we actively have worked on at the LA Times, which is there is now in our contract a rule that every position has to interview at least 2 underrepresented candidates as part of the pool, because it does boil down to, and we cited exactly that same Harvard Business Review study when we were trying to get that measure through management, thinking about a place like the LA Times and the kind of communities that we need to cover and connect with. And if you are not a diverse entity, then are you doing your job? I wanted to go talk a little bit, and I'd like to open it up to the panel about the issue of retention, because I think a lot of companies take measures to bring in, to interview, to hire, but then do people stay? And so what kind of efforts have you worked on to track employees, to support them, to make sure that they hang around? Marion?
Oh yeah, actually I have one. It's something that we're also rolling out already, but it's a program called the Multicultural and Talent Engagement Program. So we actually, if you look at our data in the US, we have higher turnover rates with people of color. And they're going to our competitors. And so we did an analysis to try to understand why are we losing. So we bring these people, this great talent in, we train them, and then they go somewhere else and get promoted. And so what we're doing is the new program is rooted on 3 things: identifying, investing, and supporting our diverse talent. So I know all of you have organizational initiatives where it's something for either gender or people of color, and they say, okay, we need candidates. And the next thing you know, they just put people, okay, you're a woman, we'll put you in. Oh, you're a person of color, we'll put you in, with no real desire to invest in these people long term. And what we found is when you do that, and after that program is over, because now these people feel, I'm a high potential, this company is going to invest in me. When the program ends and they don't receive any additional investment or support, they are more disgruntled than the people that didn't get into the program. So the first part of our program is identifying what's the talent, who are the top talent that we want to invest in long-term as an organization. D&I has to be a part of it, HR has to be a part of it, and the business leaders have to be a part of saying we're all committed to these people. So that's number 1. Number 2 is what does the investment look like? Training, emotional intelligence training, leadership training, wellness, all of these things that create a healthy leader. How are we going to invest in them? And it's a year-long program that we're doing. And then number 3 is support. You can be the best talent in the world, but if the right people don't know you, you're not going to get anywhere. 90% of the decisions made about us and our careers are made when we're not in the room. So we need to get people to go from being our mentors to being sponsors, because they're in those rooms. And so we're teaching them how to do that, but also getting the commitment from senior leadership to be mentors and ultimately sponsors for our top talent.
So, go ahead,
No,
Alan.
you go.
So I'd like to piggyback off of that. Here's what the data tells us is underrepresented talent tend to be over-mentored and under-sponsored. And so sponsorship changes the rules of the game. So I love that you brought that up, Marion.
So can you explain a little bit what the difference between mentorship and sponsorship is?
Sure. So a mentor is somebody you talk to about career, life experiences, whatever, and you pick your mentor. You don't pick a sponsor. A sponsor is someone in the organization that's high enough, who has enough social capital, who has seen you play in the organization, and in those closed door rooms where they're talking about who the next hot job goes to, a sponsor has gotten to know you and says, hey, we should give this opportunity to Joe Schmo. I've seen them do this, I've seen them. And here's another gender diversity fact. Men tend to be promoted on potential, and women tend to be promoted on past performance. And if you don't check the bias around this stuff, so you're sitting in a promotion, talent management conversation, and someone says, oh, Joe's never done that job, but he's rocked everything else he's done. We should promote him to that role. Yet you talk about Susie Q, and people will say, well, she's never done that job. Are you applying an equal standard to men as you are to women? There are all these subtle ways in which bias creeps into your systems, and if you're not smart about mitigating bias in your systems, it's, again, I'll go back to the training does no good if you're not introducing smart inclusion in the places where it really matters for people.
I would just add, I mean, building off of both points actually, is it's not just about sponsorship, but as you said, it's also about visibility. So having been part of those conversations, especially in healthcare, when I was in healthcare, it was it was kind of alarming at times how many people in one function just didn't know other, top tier diverse potential. And it was like, what are their leaders doing to kind of put them on a roadshow to kind of make sure that their peers know who they are and what they're working on, so that if there are bigger opportunities come along, they're primed and ready for those. The other thing that also worries me is a sense of tokenism. So sometimes, we've hired strong female leaders, could be of different race or ethnicity. There might be 2 or 3 of them in a function. Everyone touts them as being great, but it's like, okay, then why are we not hiring more people like this, right? Because also those people, I hate to say it, become drained from being the token African-American female that's a senior leader in an organization. So I think we need to do more to push the envelope in that regard and not just stop there and say, we have those people, great, but we need more of those people, because it's going to go back to the productivity piece that you talked about.
Yeah. And Kristina, you had talked about a program, I think, at CAA that was designed to bring disparate parts of the organization together to get over some of this issue, correct? Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So that's a part of what the training that I was speaking about is actually called Embracing Our Differences. And I called it that because it's like, how do you get a bunch of agents and executives or just people in an agency in a room to talk about this topic and have a thoughtful conversation? You don't call it a diversity and inclusion workshop or an HR workshop. That's not the way. So that is, one of the things that we do. But off of these amazing points, I think one of the things that I also wanted to bring up is just this, when you think about different cultures and how we're raised, as we think about, how do you grow in a company? Sometimes it's like the loudest or the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the promotion. And this topic of visibility, I think, is so important, because one of the challenges at agencies is a big challenge is the retention, especially at our entry level. So a lot of people are coming in, they want to try us out for a year. It's usually the grad school of entertainment, and then they want to leave. The issue sometimes that I find is that a lot of people from underrepresented backgrounds, one, have never even heard about this world of an agency. Then they get in, they don't have the same relationships as the person whose uncle at Disney got them the referral to get the interview, to get hired, and the interview was just a formality. I mean, these are real things that, we have to call out. And so it's like, what are we doing to invest in those individuals who culturally were taught to defer to their elder, so to speak, or people who were in senior positions to them? So they're not the ones that are going into this senior agent's office or reaching out to different individuals that can help them grow, or trying to, seek out those individuals and build relationships with people who could be sponsors. They're sitting back and assuming that their hard work will be the thing that gets them the promotion, when that's actually not the case, especially in this type of an industry. The hard work is assumed. That's an assumption. We assume that you're going to do hard work, and we assume that you're capable and qualified of doing the job. But I think that actually hinders the progress of so many individuals from underrepresented backgrounds, because, and it actually happened to me when I first got to the company. I was sitting in my office, head down. I came from an agency background, so I did executive search. So it was very much, get your work done, keep your head down, and you're gonna progress and excel. I came into the company, and this is at the executive level, and I'm doing that, and I was starting to realize that people were making all these assumptions about me that weren't true, in terms of just like how I relate to individuals in the business, and how, I don't necessarily want to build relationships, and I'm kind of staying to myself. So it's like, I didn't even realize I'm just trying to like do a good job and do my work. And again, my culture has informed also how I show up in a corporate setting. And I'm actually hindering myself even at the higher levels. And so imagine how that impacts our younger talent. And so what we're starting to do is be a lot more thoughtful about what are those experiences that we can curate for our talent, to basically kind of push them into the forefront and provide opportunities to access and tap into the knowledge that everyone has across the company. So one of the unique things that we do is called creative lunches, where we basically allow all of our entry-level functions to come into a conference room. One of our agents actually brings in a client, whether it's like the actual talent or a production company, executives from that production company or whoever it is, and they get to pitch ideas to these clients. That is something that is unheard of. I'm not really sure if any other agencies are doing that. It's also kind of risky because it's like you're literally bringing this talent in to pitch, but I think what's so interesting about it is that we actually, this particular agent that started these creative lunches will give the opportunity to our staff level functions to kind of help them craft their pitch. Then they go into the room and they're pitching these ideas to clients, and some of these ideas have made it to the big screen, whether it's film or television or whatever that may be, and that's like giving this talent an opportunity to put themselves up on a pedestal and get into the actual like weeds of the work of being an agent to figure out, is this something that I truly want to do? And it's also showing like we believe in you enough to put you in a room with our clients and let you pitch ideas to them. So I think
that's such an issue of that visibility, giving the visibility. And since we're starting to run low on time, I wanted to come back to Illy, because how does what you do, how can that play into this issue of retention?
Sure. I'll just add something small, and then I'll answer your question. So basically what we've seen is a lot of big companies, the ones that we work with, great companies on this panel, that companies kind of like set goals for 2023, 2020. I think a lot of employees across the company has zero to very limited visibility on their, or impact on their day-to-day in the company. And what we encourage companies, even though it's not the space that we play in along this diversity and inclusion space, is to give the opportunity for employees all across the companies to do small activities that they relate to. It can be something for Women's Month or African Americans Month or whatever, but just small activities that you budget and sponsor as a company for them to feel like they belong and not just included. And I think it's a big shift that companies are going through, from inclusion to belonging, and just make more impact on their day-to-day, so they can feel it more on their daily life, and it will help them stay in the company for a longer time. But regarding what we're doing, so we are very focused today on sourcing, but along 2020 and 21, we will release more kind of like components that will help not just recruit, but also keep the talent in the organization. The first thing that we're gonna launch is basically helping companies leveraging the technology that we have for exchanging talent between companies, is to make sure that mobility internally in the company is more accessible for underrepresented candidates. And they get more exposure, I think sometimes women, people of color can like look at a job description, even if it's internally, and say, I don't know if I'm a good fit for it. So kind of like experience versus potential. Same goes for women apply if they're 100% good for a job, and men apply if they're 60% good for a job. And so we kind of like try to encourage those underrepresented candidates to apply even if they're not 100% fit. So we look at the internal job description, their resume, what they've done in the company, and encourage them to apply to internal jobs more often than others. So this is the first thing that we're gonna help, instead of kind of like tell them, hey, you should look for a job in another company, or a competitor say, hey, wait, don't go anywhere. Like there's an opportunity for you internally, and this company cares about you, and they just launched this feature internally, and help them just move them internally between jobs rather than leaving, I guess.
So using the data to encourage people to
encourage people to apply to jobs that are 80% or 70% good fit for.
Marion, you got 30 seconds.
Okay, so
As I see from our
so I just wanted to go back to a point that was made, that Kristina made around networking. So basically you were saying, how do people network, especially underrepresented, don't want to be pushy and those types of things. So I also do executive coaching, and it's really important to ensure that people understand how to show up as a connector and not a parasite. And so it's really, really important. So as you're talking about these things and when you're going back to your organizations, you really need to craft training around how to network appropriately. Because some people say, okay, I need to network, and they go and they ask everyone for a job. And now everyone's running when they see them. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it's really important to understand how to network as a connector.
We are unfortunately out of time. They all had such great stories. I unfortunately did not get to questions, but hopefully folks will be hovering around for a little bit. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you to the panelists for attending. I've learned a lot for my own organization. So thank you.